Welcome back to Who Are You Now? This season is an exploration of nervous system safety. Not something we achieve, but something the body begins to recognize. And one of the first places the body goes to look for safety is the breath. But breath work has become complicated. It's often framed as effort, intensity, or release. Another thing to do, another place to go. What I'm more interested in is what happens when the breath isn't used as a tool, but experienced as a relationship. Because the body is already breathing and the breath is already responding to stress, to safety, to bracing, to rest. So rather than starting this season with instructions, I wanted to start with a conversation about listening. So Diana, when people hear the word breath work, what do you think they assume it's supposed to do? And how is that different from what breath actually offers?
Wow, that's a great question. A lot of times when people come to me to do breath work and to practice breathing, which is like you were saying, it's kind of funny because we do it naturally.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden in yoga or in our traditions, we say pranayama, prana meaning breath or life force, and yama meaning to stretch it out. And so people come to me or to my yoga school to practice breathing for different reasons. I think a lot of what I see is that people want to be able to modulate their nervous system and to be able to calm themselves down when they need to. Mm-hmm. And so when they practice doing a pranayama practice, they get better at doing this breath in a space and in a time. But then they take this, let's say a half an hour breath practice into the other 23 and a half hours of their life. So they really see the benefit of that practice. But I think ultimately, honestly, Chrissie, I think people are looking to be more healthy, to just be more vibrantly healthy and to use what I would consider your number one fueling system. There's food, there's water, and there's breath at the top. Mm-hmm. And so I think people are just trying to connect to that thing that we do automatically, naturally, and the way we try to eat better, or the way that we try to drink clean water or drink more water, enough water. People are now just, it's so exciting for me because people are just now realizing how important, as you beautifully say, a relationship with your breath is.
Mm-hmm. And so, I want to pause here because this conversation is a continuation of the theme for what this season 3 is, which is nervous system safety. Mm-hmm. And the breath is such an important part of that, if not the number one part of helping you regulate your nervous system. It's easy, it's free, it's air, it's something you have control over.
Yes.
In situations you
have control over. Yes.
It's the control of something within yourself in situations that you don't have control over, or, life in general. It's bringing it back inside. And, yes. And like our last conversation, when we talk about living from the inside out, I feel like this is a really important aspect of that. It's breath. Mm-hmm. So before we go further, I want listeners to have some context for who they're hearing from. Diana Christensen is a yoga instructor. She's a breathwork facilitator and the owner and practitioner at Pacific Ashtanga Yoga Shala in Dana Point. And her work lives at that intersection of breath, nervous system safety, and embodied awareness. Mm. And yes. So that's why I felt like this was the right conversation for season 3, because your work doesn't rush the nervous system towards change. It honors readiness. I want to talk a little bit about just reframing breath work, because I think it's this illusion of, I can't do that. I don't know where to start. What is it? It's something only yoga, spiritual people do. It's really an everyday thing. Yes. And it can be an everyday thing. What do people misunderstand about breath work?
There are two aspects, there's a breath work that is a practice, and there's breath work that's just intertwined in our daily activities. Like we're breathing right now. And if I'm nervous about being on your podcast, I might be breathing differently, And so I think what you and I are very interested in is how do we begin to look at ourselves more and be able to self-diagnose and be aware of when we're in a situation, the breath is changing and that serves us or it doesn't.
And that's the key to the information is having that information come in when you're listening to your breath, listening to the feelings of your body when you're breathing might be in a different state than your baseline. That's where it changes automatically. You don't really have to do anything. It's that giving your body that permission to be however it is in that moment. It then realizes, oh, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the awareness itself oftentimes creates the nervous system safety that you're looking for. And that sometimes we might go straight to like, oh, I'm supposed to breathe this way to calm my nervous system down. You might not need to go all the way over there if you just back up and listen a little bit.
Right. I think in our last podcast, I shared with you one of my favorite quotes that's become a mantra for myself and my students, which is a quote by Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning. He said, somewhere between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in this space lies our power to choose. And in that power lies our growth and our liberation, our freedom. I butchered it a little bit, but I talk a lot about that space. And whether I'm nervous because I'm on a podcast or I'm late for something, or whether I'm just ready to go to bed at night, if we start to have more self-awareness and we create these spaces, then I can either go deeper into that breath and that parasympathetic nervous system, or I can take that space to make a choice that can take me back into, I can modulate more readily and more naturally back into the state that I want to be in. And sometimes that's your sympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I need to wake up, Di, you're tired and you got to drive, or, and there it is. It's like, again, it's my number one fuel. There it is. And if I just take a few deep breaths, all of a sudden I feel, wow, I have energy. Or if I really want to go to bed at night, but something's running my head and I'm in my sympathetic nervous system, and you can't sleep when you're there, as we all know. Something as simple as just long exhales, just to help modulate us back to that place that the space in between gives us a knowing, an internal knowing about where am I right now? And I can even move deeper into that, like, oh, okay, it's time to rest, time to go to bed.
And that little bit of information creates the regulation you're looking for so that you can go to sleep, right? The body knows it's safe, which is my whole point. When the body realizes it's safe, I know where I am, and it might not be ideal. It forms a trust because you're listening to your body, you're being aware of it. And so the relationship with your body starts to change, and it comes down out of that fight or flight.
It really does. And I know I've shared this with you before, but for the listeners, I refer to Sanskrit a lot. It's one of the oldest languages, but I love to kind of use language to break things down and for us to kind of step back and look at things. But one of the things I love to think about is svadhyaya, sva meaning self and adhyaya meaning getting close to something. So self-study, and how important. You have my degrees in psychology, and I've always understood the importance of know thyself. And I think this particular episode today is about svadhyaya, about just getting close to ourselves and knowing ourselves and listening to ourselves and giving us that pause or that space in between to feel and let the breath carry us.
And it's letting the breath carry us versus us trying to control the breath. So what I find is when people refer to breath work, they often think that there's just this agenda to get to a certain place or to complete. And, I want to talk a little bit about breath using breath as information versus using breath as control. Because I do see that some people try towards going to breath work because they want to control something within their body. They feel like it would give them sort of like a step up. But I think that they're missing the intention of the breath in itself. So can we talk a little bit about that? The differences between when we use breath as information, like we've been talking about, versus trying to use it to control.
Yeah. So that, again, that self-awareness, actually, it's one of the things that I teach in my breath workshops and my breath class, but also just in yoga. It's just to pay attention to your breathing. And when you need it, like to just listen to it. And just something as simple as when we are breathing shallow and breathing through our mouth, that tells us something.
Absolutely.
And I know you're going to unpack the nervous system, which, it's so helpful to be able to be aware of what that means. I know for myself, I've been teaching breath practice and helping people with specific issues or things that they're working on, athletes. But it's just that first bit, that just the awareness. People don't realize they're breathing through their mouth rather than their nose, or people don't realize that their breath is shallow. And so just for me, a little bit of education goes a long way. And when you have that sense, then you find yourself rushing in the car, and you find yourself all nervous about something, or you find yourself, wherever you are, you're like, wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
And then you just say like, oh, okay.
And it's okay to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Instead of, what am I doing next?
Mm-hmm.
Not being aware of where you are in space or in the present moment actually puts you more into nervous system dysregulation because you're anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't even happened yet. So you're anticipating the future, anticipating how you're going to feel, or, oh, I'm going to be late. All of it, just bringing it back into, I'm a little discombobulated right now. Let me just pause, is what I call that space.
Yeah.
Let me just pause a minute. I'm right here. Okay, now I can move forward, right? So, well, let's talk a little bit about the physiology of breath, like what the breath is quietly trying to tell you. So you had mentioned, if I'm breathing really shallow and fast, what that usually means is that your nervous system is sensing urgency, right? It's sensing some sort of vigilance or protection because it went into, it's breathing shallow. It is not accessing your full oxygen, right? If you feel like you're holding your breath or your pause, what that usually means is that you're uncertain. I'm uncertain in this moment, so I'm not breathing at all, right? There's some sort of bracing or an anticipation there. And I'm sure everybody's done it where we've caught ourselves, I'm actually holding my breath.
Yes. And that's good if you actually catch it.
Yes.
Yes.
Here's a good one because it happens almost automatically and internally, sighing. There's a physiologic release. The body comes down when I sigh. And so if you're catching that you're sighing, maybe stop and think like, well, what was I holding?
Yeah.
The soft, spontaneous breath when we're relaxed, it usually represents, I feel safe in this moment. I'm present right here. My body's settling. I'm sure we were both nervous before we started the podcast, but now that we're sort of, the posture changes, you get a little softer. You can feel the groundedness in the room, and the breath mirrors that, right? If you have an irregular rhythm, your body is probably emotionally processing something. So it's focusing on the information and because there's spikes of emotion and so forth as it's processing, many times the rhythm of your breath is not necessarily steady because it's doing something else, if that makes sense. And none of these are wrong. They're just signals.
Right.
It's just telling you where you're at in that moment. And so allowing yourself to be like, oh no, I don't want to be nervous. Let me do this breath technique I learned, maybe pause and just acknowledge that like, I'm a little anxious right now. And as soon as your body realizes you've listened to it, the anxiety goes away. Usually.
There's opportunity. I think your point is that when you pause and you're self-aware, there's opportunity. And like, who would raise their hand, but I want to stay in that anxious state. That feels really good.
Right.
I want to dig deeper into that.
Yeah.
But oftentimes when we're in that anxious state, we're not aware of it. When we're holding our breath, we're not aware of it. And so I think more than anything, this first episode is about learning, and you had said having a relationship with your breath so that you have an awareness of it. And even myself, I love to hike up a trail in Laguna, and I know it's best for me is to breathe through my nose, not through my mouth, and to breathe long. But I'll be hiking up with my dog and I'll be like, but then I'll have that awareness. I'm like, oh, stretch it out.
Slow down enough so you can breathe through your nose, right?
Yes. And it's not punitive at all. It's like you said, it's informative. Like having that information is so helpful, but it's not helpful without awareness. Right. So I think that's the number one thing is just having awareness of your breath.
Well, and I when we do this, like, oh, I'm going to do a breathwork class, or I'm going to practice what I learned in Diana's class, sometimes we get into a space where it becomes performative versus informative. And instead of having that awareness and that information, we jump straight into slow it down. Okay, breathe deeper. Inhale through the nose, all of those things, but we skip the pause, we skip the feedback. And the feedback, that relationship with the feedback and your breath and yourself is where all the magic is. When people say, oh, I'm doing my work, what is that? That's the relationship with yourself. That's being able to recognize the signs and the signals and the sensations that your body is going through so that you can interpret and then decide what you want to do versus just changing it. Because oftentimes those changes don't work because we don't have enough information to even know what it was that we're trying to change. Yeah. And so the body has a really hard time staying in change because it didn't learn anything, or it didn't have a baseline to change from. So we go all over the place, right? Yeah, it's like that squirrel, right? And I don't think we want to live like that. I think people are really looking for ways to feel safe within their body so that the things that they want in life or the things that they want to accomplish can be done from a knowing, like you said. It's that knowing that's right for me. And that doesn't mean it's always comfortable, but I do know. And then trust and faith come in. But we need to get to that sense where we have a relationship with not only breath, but our bodies so that I can tell, I know the knowing. I know what the feeling of knowing feels like. And that requires a real drop into your body because it's a body sense of knowing. It's intuition, but it's intuition from your body, not above. It's a very grounded sense where it's calm. It's not anxiety. It's not excitement. It's truth. Well, that's the best way I can say that. When you skip that step, you skip the truth. You skip the opportunity, like you said, for the body to tell the truth about where it's at and how it's feeling. And like I said, I think that that's where all the magic is. Awareness says, this is what's here in this moment, not what should be here, not what I want here. That alone creates regulation for people because it's the knowing, this is what's here. So I just wanted to go into that a little bit as far as what we're really talking about with breath, and that you don't necessarily need to change it first. It's just, what is my breathing telling me?
Yeah, I think that's with everything, just an ability to be aware. And once you're aware, then you can decide what you do with that awareness. Certainly I'm a believer, since my little pyramid here of breath is the number one fuel, is that awareness will tell you, like, what do I need? And that svadhyaya, that self-awareness, is like something as simple as when I go to work and I'm sitting in front of my computer or I'm in a meeting, just to be aware of your breath, because that's going to tell you what's going on with your nervous system. And let's face it, it's our medicine cabinet as well, right? So it's oftentimes then connected to how we feel. So if I'm feeling anxious, I understand that now that I've studied breath for so many years now, I understand how that anxiety is connected to breath, or how depression, can be connected to, and how joy can be connected to breath, and how feelings of being fully present, like you talked about earlier, like scattered and whatnot, like, in yoga, we talk about your ability to hold your prana And when we're able to hold our prana, we can then choose a pause and we can decide, do I want to stay in the state that I'm feeling I'm in, or do I want to shift out of it? Mm-hmm. And breath gives us the awareness that you're talking about, but also the possibility to shift.
Yeah. And I think that having that possibility within you, knowing that you get to decide, gives a sense of safety.
Yes, absolutely. I cannot tell you how many people I have worked with that we have used breath to help them with the thing that they felt that was out of control in their life. Mm-hmm. To just give them that, to say, your breath is your life force, and we can use our life force, and we can connect and have this relationship with our life force. Mm-hmm. I love the translations in other countries when we talk about breath. It isn't just oxygen and carbon, it's life force, it's prana, it's chi, it's ki, and it's animates every aspect of who we are. Mm-hmm. And so when someone comes to me and they want to work on something in their life, oftentimes what I'm going to sit with them with and work with them and listen to them is their prana, mm-hmm. their life force, their breath.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this. When would someone not be ready for breath work?
That's such a great question. In my tradition of Ashtanga yoga, we had to be advanced at a certain level of yoga, asana, and our breath, our ability to hold our breath, use our breath in our asana practice, our physical practice. We had to be at a certain level advanced. Like, think of it as martial arts, like mm-hmm. at a brown belt,
black belt,
or whatever, before we were allowed to study pranayama. Because the ancient wisdom and tradition was the pranayama we were going to study was going to work with our life force in such a way that it could actually be dangerous if you didn't know what you were doing. Oh. So there was all these disclaimers back when I was in India and we were learning it. And still today, if you read books on pranayama, they would take it very seriously and be like, have a good teacher, know what you're doing. But those practices have to do with long breath holds, or, we're using all these different techniques of breathing. So on one hand, I would say in my tradition, we'd say you need a good teacher and you need to start at the beginning and work your way to advanced pranayama practices. But on the other side of that answer is breath practices for everyone. When you're going to birth a child, someone teaches you the best breath practice for that. And I think we've really grown in our culture, and there's so much more information just in the last 5 or 10 years. There's more research about breath and pranayama and practice. And I have used it. I've had my teachers that teach pranayama help people in hospital settings that struggle with depression. They've helped one. I love this story of his older mother who was so anxious caring for her disabled husband. She used a simple breath practice, like, I could teach someone the simplest breath practice that you could use today. And that's for everyone. Learning to breathe through your nose is for everyone. So at some point, we are living more in our sympathetic rather than our parasympathetic, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. We don't modulate as well as we used to. And so we've trained ourselves to breathe through our mouths. And we always say, breathe with your nose, eat with your mouth. It's very simple.
So true.
And I'm sure you're going to unpack that as you do these episodes. It's going to be exciting for me to follow this with you as well, because there's so much power in teaching someone just simply breathe through your nose. Mm-hmm. And then when people come to me, they're like, Diana, I want a breath practice to help me with my depression or whatever. Or I'm going through a sadness right now. And as you said, we want to feel our sadness. We want to feel our grief. We want to listen to our bodies. And at the same time, have something that feels medicinal to help me release maybe or work through. And that's a breath practice. There's some monks right now walking through from Texas all the way to Washington, D.C. And this simple Thai monk, when he's telling perfect strangers that are not Buddhists, by the way, mm-hmm. that want peace in their life, what does he say? He said, breathe in and breathe out, and let your mind follow. Breathe in and breathe out. And that's his instruction for living a peaceful life today. That's breath practice. Anyone can do it.
And I think that if we use breath as a mirror instead of a tool, because like you said, let your mind follow.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's the physiology of you breathe in through your nose versus your mouth. There's a higher oxygen transfer, lower CO2. So all of the physiologic benefits. But when you tie that into the relationship with your body, when you allow your mind not to get stuck in something where we ruminate, when we're letting it flow, as we're just doing our simple breathing, it allows it not to get stuck in our tissues.
Mm-hmm. You know that.
And so
I know that. So
just
to
like,
put us together,
when we talk about emotions that are held in the body, it's because we don't allow them to flow with the breath.
Yeah.
It's like the body stores it for later because we didn't witness it as it was happening. And so that itself, you don't have to act on what you notice, but just simply breathing moves it through.
Exactly. So to answer your question, we're kind of coming back to that, like that is a breath practice. Mm-hmm. And I think as you had said this at the very beginning, that some people feel like a breath practice is, this hard effort. You're going to do this. And that's one far end of this extreme. But on the other side of, we practice kindness. We practice joy. You and I are committed to practicing joy.
Being gentle with yourself. Mm-hmm. And all of it starts with yourself, allowing yourself to feel joy and the grief and the sadness and bliss. Then we can help others. We can hold space for others in those emotions. But until you have that relationship with your body and that you can identify, oh, this is what this is, without really trying to hold on to it, which is what breath allows. It allows the movement. It allows the awareness. It's, and just to name it, there are many different breathwork techniques and approaches that support awareness of the body and nervous system regulation or invite you to simply be present. But what we're exploring together here isn't the method, it's the relationship underneath it. So when Diana talks about the vast scale of the hardcore breathing extreme and bring it all the way to just present every day, I would like us to start with the present every day. And I know that people are on their different journeys of where they're at in breath work, but to simplify it a little bit.
Yeah.
And not oversimplify. It is just breathing. Mm-hmm. But you can observe so much information if you're just aware while you're breathing. Not just how you're breathing, but what's attached to it depending on how you're breathing.
Yes.
Right? And then to just let it go. It's not a big catharsis. It's very gentle movement.
Yeah, I mean, just with the example with the monks touching thousands and thousands of people's lives with the simplest direction, which you think we're doing automatically, right? Breathing, but just they're really helping everyone be aware of their breath. And then to just say, in that awareness, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And that's, like we said, it's the simplest place for you to start with this. I want to say your semester study.
Sure.
I like to say that.
And also that breath is something to be received, right? It's not something to be managed in the sense of, oh, am I doing it right? Oh, I could do it better. It's a receiving. I mean, you're receiving from the universe. It's your life force, like you're saying. So allow yourself to receive it. Understand the information or be aware of the information that it might be showing you. And then you can decide what you want to do with it. And mm-hmm. then you can decide if you want to do a specific breath work or some sort of technique. But it's more about backing up and let's just be right where we're at first. And I know everybody's at a different place, but we all we all have to breathe in order to survive. But we all share that commonality of, I think everybody does want peace. A long time ago, it used to be happiness. I always said happiness is a decision. Mm-hmm. But peace is something different. It's not the ups and the downs. It's being able to stay constant in your knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it feels like that's what the world is searching for. Not so much on, yes, on a global scale, but it starts within you. We can't have, with all the chaos that's going on, we can't have that kind of peace unless people start finding their own peace. And then we connect in together to that global consciousness.
That's what the Dalai Lama teaches us and these simple monks, but it's a universal spiritual truth that inner peace always begins here. So it's perfect for your teachings this semester to allow people to just sit with and be mindful and aware of their own breathing.
And so if outside formal yoga or breath work, if someone listening didn't change their breath at all, but simply allowed themselves to notice it, what might the body begin to learn?
I think that there's a lot of great information that could help anybody if they just had a little knowledge about what breath does tell us. And I think breath can tell us when we're having a panic attack and before we have a panic attack. Breath can tell us when we are low in energy and possibly in a depression. Breath can tell us when we're in our sympathetic nervous system, which is wonderful. I always use the example I have. I don't know, I just choose an example and then I stick with it for years. But I have a student who's Japanese and she translates language for her vocation. And I always try to trick my students. And I say, when Yoshi has to do a presentation and translate this, and she's nervous and she's sweating and her heart's beating, she's in her sympathetic nervous system. And so I'm like, is that good or bad? And all the yogis want to say, oh, that's very bad. But of course it's not.
No, it's not.
We perform better. Mm-hmm. But that's why we have our sympathetic nervous system, everything that's tied to that. It also
means that you care about what you're just getting ready to do. If you're just cruising in like, I don't know how it's going to go, there's a sense of not performing, but it's something that means something to you.
Yes. And so
that can raise it as well.
Right. So every system, a little euphoric, and then we kind of break down, well, she's going to translate better. She's going to be sharper. She might even be funny. Then I talk about, okay, so now Yoshi does it. It's finished. She can either think she did a great job or she could have done better, whatever, but it's done. Mm-hmm. So now the interesting thing is with breath, is now when she goes back to her desk or when she drives home at night and she's about to go to bed at night, is she still thinking about her presentation and nervous about it? And your breath can tell you if you're still stuck in your sympathetic nervous system. Because of course, what we all know, we want to modulate out of that. We're in our cave now. It's night. We want to turn our work off. We want to turn our minds off and rest, digest our food. That is something that breath can tell you if you haven't let go of it. Your breath can signal that and give you a sense of when you're holding on to something. For all of us, it could be as simple as you're reading the news. And our breath can tell us like what we might be holding from the news or what we might be feeling from that. And again, just give you that opportunity of self-awareness. I think so often, and you know this, and I do because we work with people's emotionality as well as their bodies, is the breath can be the number one tool for people just being able to assess where they are emotionally.
Absolutely.
And then how the body holds our emotions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And remember that receiving that information, if you're aware enough and you stop and pause, has to happen before change happens. Has to happen before you can modulate out of that.
Absolutely. Without the knowledge, you can't do it, right?
There's nothing there. Right.
Yeah. So today is really about just be aware of your breath.
Yes.
Just be fully present and aware of your breathing.
And what information does it give you? Mm-hmm. So what do you want people to trust about their breath?
Well, as we're talking about the nervous system, it's doing its job. Yoshi's such a great example. It's doing it, the heartbeats. It's all doing what it needs to do. But to be honest with you, I can't not say at times it's not doing what it needs to. Sure. That's my job. That's part of my job, is to help people breathe better.
Oh, of course.
And to be more to use it as a tool. But we're not down that path yet. So I would just say...
that's like part B.
That's part B. I know. So we're not there yet. But for today, I just think for the awareness, it will give you a sense of where you are and really identify with what you're feeling. I think oftentimes we're not even aware of how we're feeling. We're just disconnected, which is why something like having a sense of svadhyaya is so important.
Yeah. And the breath already knows what we tend to override. And so it's right there. I don't want to say it's a tool, but it's a vast information. If you just look at it, if you just stop a minute and feel it, there's so much flow that happens that then we just don't hold on to it. And if we can practice that, I wouldn't be working on so many people, or, people wouldn't be getting physical pain from the emotions they're holding in their body, because the body's only holding on to it because you're not listening. Mm-hmm. It's trying to impart information to you, and then it releases. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I am doing that in an area with my hands as we're talking through it. But this season's also about things that people can do on their own, being aware of, that will give you so much, I don't want to say peace or reward. I guess it's the release. It's self-healing. That's what it is. Like, we can heal ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's great that we have guides and teachers. But I also want people to know, like, a lot of this stuff, there's a baseline where you can start a lot of this on your own and get pretty far. And then you go to part B. And then you go to the classes, because now you understand the workings of it. But I want people not to have to go somewhere to be healed. I want them to learn that a lot of this healing can be done by just listening to your breath and your body.
Right. Absolutely. And I think when you're aware, most of the time, Chrissie, if you're aware of your breath, if you just stop to be aware of it, you're probably going to shift.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
But without the awareness, you're not going to shift. Mm-hmm. But with the awareness, we're built to go into that parasympathetic when we need it.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's there. That's why it's fight or flight. It's there for survival.
Yeah. So once you're aware of it, you automatically want to exhale. You want to take a longer exhale. You want to breathe longer. It's in our makeup. Mm-hmm. So just that awareness will help you go into the natural teacher that you have within you to, as you said, we're inhaling and taking in, but part of both of our work is that exhale and release.
Just as important.
Whatever it is we're feeling, we're letting it move through us.
Moving through. As we close, I want to say that nothing in this conversation is asking you to do anything. Breath doesn't need to be improved to be trustworthy. It's already responding, moment by moment, to what feels safe, what feels uncertain, and what's ready. If there's anything that you take from this, it's simply permission. Permission to stop managing your breath. Permission to let awareness be enough. Safety doesn't arrive through effort. It arrives when the body feels listened to. So, Diana, thank you for bringing such a grounded presence to this conversation, and for reminding us that gentleness isn't avoidance. It's information. And to you listening, let what landed stay. Let the rest pass. Your breath already knows how to meet you where you are. Our shift has ended for today.